and gentlemen, this is the main event of the evening. And now, it's time!
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. It's your boy P. Welsh here, bringing to you a UFC Fight Night preview for Dolidze v. Imavov. And excuse me on pronunciations of the names. I will butcher pretty much all of them, so enjoy them and get a good laugh in. We're bringing down the full fight card preview. Very avid fan, been watching very consistently for a couple years now, and this is something I want to produce some videos to just share some light in here. Stream very often on twitch.tv/pwelsh. Join me anytime there, chat. But we're going to get right into it with Thomas Peterson versus Jamal Hughes. And this is going to be a cracker to start the card off, man. And I always love the matchups to start the card off. They always tend to have some fireworks. They reward the fans who want to be there and get there early. And I think this one has a lot to give up here. We got Peterson making his debut at 1-0, 2-inch disadvantage to Hughes, who, if you look at his fight history, has a very decision-heavy card. When you see Peterson very knockout heavy, and I think that's what the fight makers want at the start of this. They want to see some fireworks, they want to see some action. Not a super lot to break down here. I do remember Hughes playing to a decision, very conservative fighter in the last fight that I watched him. I'm excited to see Peterson line it up. New heavyweights joining the division is always exciting. I got the odds at -166 for Peterson, and I really like him there. Also, the fight not to go the distance is very attractive. I don't know if you want to pair them together here. That's where I would be leaning on one of those two to add into there. It should be a great matchup to start the fight. I can't see it going a full 15 minutes. Even with Hughes in there, I feel like unless he just plays super defensive like he did in his last fight and really doesn't take any chances, just kind of punching and backing up, this could be a fast one, and it could be a great way to start the night there. So that's where I'm kind of leaning. I like Peterson and the fight not to go the distance to open up the fight night on February 3rd in UFC Apex. All right, we're going to go on to the second bout here. We got Quinones versus Marco Menderos. Debut for Menderos, and we got Quinones, and he has, been up and down. This has been a close fight. I like another one not to go the distance. We got another debut man in Menderos, and very similar on the tape. Very explosive power. We're going to see a lot of striking. Lightweights, I wouldn't expect to see done on the ground here. Could be a finish. Could be a very close fight. One that I really like here is maybe above the 2.5 rounds. This is a very hard one to handicap. I really would lean towards Menderos because he has no experience, but he made his debut, Quinones, last year in a loss, so we'll see how that stacks up coming into this fight with confidence being a thing. Starting off, that's a big thing, having experience in the octagon versus somebody that you haven't had any experience with it. You want to be a well-rounded fighter, striking, grappling, defense. You don't want to be exposed as a one-trick pony, which I'll kind of break down a little bit more on some fighters later in the video. But this is a very hard one. I like the fight to not go the distance, but maybe above the 2.5. I think you can see a late finish here, if not an early one as well. So this one's very hard to handicap, and just enjoy the fight when they get in there when you see some new guys like that. Next, we have Carolina versus Starelenko, and man, this should be another opening odds on the website. They've taken them off because they were really oblong. Starelenko is coming in pretty close to plus money. Excuse me, let me rephrase that. She's at -130, Starelenko. Carolina is at +110. And boy, this should be another one. I like this fight to go the distance maybe. A lot of decisions for Carolina, and sub could be a lot of takedowns for Starelenko. Maybe, again, that +2.5 rounds, a late sub as she wears her down. Starelenko did sub Molly McCann in her last fight, but McCann really played into that sub. So this should be another good one. I expect this one to have a lot of fight time. I don't expect to see a lot of fireworks here. Women's flyweight, not the most firework division that we have on the roster, but should be, good to see a pecking order fight, to see where the ladies line up moving forward in their fighting careers. Should be well balanced to see if Starelenko can strike, or if Carolina can really manage the distance and defend well. She's got an absolutely great chance, to get a win there. And so we'll be moving on to the next fight. We got Blake Builder versus Jong Yong Lee. Excuse me. 10-1 win. Builder 8-1-1 loss in his last fight there. Lee seems to be like a very well-rounded fighter. He seems to have very KO, subs, and decisions. Seems like he can adjust very well, and I like that. I like a fighter that doesn't have too many weaknesses and that can adjust to what their opponent is doing. Builder looks like he is a little bit more of a sub-wrestling specialist, right? Looking to win points and rounds, not so much fireworks on the feet. So if he has trouble getting Lee to the ground, it could be big advantage for Lee there because, if you have trouble, if grapplers can't close the distance, they're just going to get beat up trying to shoot. They're going to lose their energy as they try and take more and more shots to gain their advantage. This one, I got Lee at -148, and I just love that pick, man. I just think he's very well-rounded. Again, upsets happen all the time in the UFC. These are just kind of what I think might happen based on what I fought, but these guys look like it's going to be a good matchup. We're going to see a nice fight, and that one should be having the fans smiling at the end of that fight. So taking to that one, I like Lee -166 there, and then we're going to move on to the welterweight bat of Gore Imbo versus P. Rodriguez. Now, P is a 5-0 striker, and all of his wins by decision. And Gorbino here is the sub guy with a decision record. A lot more experience for Gorbino. Takedown, he's got a big length advantage, 6'1 versus 5'9. We're going to see something like that come involved in this one. And this is one of our juicier odds of the night. They really like Gorbino -258 and P-Rod at +210. This is one that I can see going a little bit over. I like the +1.5 rounds at plus money. I think you could see Gorbino. It could end early. This could end very early in the second round, if not the first round, just because there's such a matchup discrepancy with height and styles that if the other fighter can't adjust properly, we might be looking at a pretty quick fight. But I think these fighters are well scrapped. The more and more experience you get, the harder and harder it is to finish these guys unless you're a supreme knockout artist or just, catch them cleanly, with like some of those head kicks. But this one, I can't really handicap the fight. I like Gorbino a lot, but I really think the over 1.5 rounds, I think they can get there. That's, the fight time might not be the most for P. Rodriguez, but he could gas. Hopefully he has a little bit of takedown defense, but even maybe Gorbino by sub too could be if we get a little juice on that. I haven't looked too much into the odds, but as we breaking down the fights, that could be something to take a look at the longer and longer it goes in there. Next up, we have Maxim versus Charles Johnson, 17-0, undefeated Kazakhstan flyweight, fighting Charles Johnson, 5'9", and well-experienced, coming off a loss in his last fight. Again, this one has this one that Maxim hasn't lost and Charles has lost. What I've seen is certain fighters have propensities to lose in the octagon, and people that haven't lost, they're going to try and do everything they can to win. I think this would be a lot closer fight than the card, and the odds are not really that stretched on them either. It's +180 versus -210. Charles is a live dog there. He always has a chance to take home the W, but like that being said, he also has taken some losses, has been finished, but he's an active fighter, confident, and ready to step up. I really like this fight. Again, they have it scheduled to go the distance, and I could see that happening. It should be a very closely contested flyweight fight. You should see some grappling. You should see some exchanges. I think you may see a finish here. I think Charles could go down late in the third round and really kind of solidify Maxim's space in the flyweight division, ascending in there. With the flyweights, the talent gap seems very stretched at the top versus the middle. Those guys at the very, very top seem to be very, very shocked. Look at Pantoja, look at Moreno, even Figgy when he was in there. I like Makavev is looking really sharp in there, and like even look at the other guys that they face. The Darren Elkins, the Tim Elliott's, like these guys that just have experience, they have their dogs in them, they always got a chance. So I like in the lower end fights. So Charles definitely got a chance, but I really like Maxim there. Should take home the decision. Over in the rounds, this is not one I really want to touch too much in terms of wagering. Should just be another good fight. I love just the stylistic vet versus undefeated young guy. Should be a great flyweight. Maybe a lot of hugging, a lot of grappling, but hopefully we see a finish in there. I'm thinking we could see a finish, surprise somebody, fight not to go the distance, and we're moving on to the last card of the prelims, and we have Meatball Molly McCann versus Diana Belbita. And boy, do I not really know how to handicap this fight either. Molly is a big, big favorite, which to me, that's a popularity favorite. That's just people seeing her name, knowing she's associated with Patty. And, I think that's kind of a fanfic. Now, Belbita has taken some losses. They have common opponents. I just feel like the pressure and the ring gets to McCann in a way. I think she panicked in her last fight, and it rolled her into a sub and cost her the decision, and I'm worried about something like that can happen again. Belbita is a well-rounded fighter, but I think Molly Meatball can knock her out, which is probably where I would be leaning because she's desperate and has to throw hands. And I'm not sure if Belbita, I haven't seen enough of her fights, really, but I'm not sure if her game is as sharp enough to dismantle somebody like McCann, who's desperate, absolutely desperate for a win. So is a fan favorite to end the prelims on the early card. This one is another tough one to say. It could be a live dog. I could be not to go the distance. I really like maybe not go the distance, be the fan, because I think Molly can really get it down. But the juice at like 2+ or minus 250 is just not really there to take her straight up, especially with her history. So just keep that in mind. Could go the distance, could get a finish. The women's, I don't like handicapping. The women's divisions are very difficult for me. They don't have a lot of, this is not as depth, and I'm not as in sync with it as I am in the men's division. So we move on there, and we're going to go to the main card of the first fight of the main card, and we got Gilbert Urbina versus Charles Radke, welterweight fight, very similar records. Close to say. Radke has a kind of a lot more experienced opponents versus Urbina. Urbina has definitely like a physical advantage. He's got a slight length reach advantage. Really? But I'm kind of leaning Radke in here. I feel like Radke's one of those guys that, like, if Urbina's trying to get a decision against Radke's just going to go forward. And I think these are one that's a very live dog. I think Radke is going off at plus 170. And if you watch the fight game over and over again, week in, week out, and you look at the odds, you know that minus 200 fighters lose on every card. Trust me, I know. I've bet them, and I've lost. So just take that with a grain of salt every time you see the numbers in the handicapping, that just because they're minus 270, minus 205, it doesn't mean they won't get they won't get beat up in the octagon. So with that being said, I kind of like Urbina's well-rounded game. He's but I think Radke is going to come in and get the upset today. Urbina's a lot younger, got subbed by Battle earlier in his career. Then we got Radke over here. I think he could put it together, do some damage, get him on the ground and pound, finish Urbina. Fight not to go the distance, very nice. I always, like I said, you kind of got to look where the fights are on the card, and right when they want to get people coming in, they like to give them some action. So Urbina, Radke, not to go the distance. Lean in Radke, get some nice juice on it. Very similar records. Doesn't seem like it should be that big of a discrepancy between the odds, but we go with Radke on that one just because that's how I feel about watching the fights. If you just always blindly take the favorites, you're gonna get beat up. So from what I've seen, I like Radke there and not to go the distance. Next, we have Kurzavov versus Muradov. Excuse my language, chat. I'm not very fluent in Russian. We have undefeated versus 26-8. A lot of experience for Muradov. Coming fighting at middleweight, so he's going to have to cut 6'2 to 5'9". Huge advantage, but it's all in the legs. So that means you got them long arms like Sergey Pavlovich. And not going to lie here, I am leaning Kurzavov because the undefeated record, like I said, I just favor those guys that got the dog. Now, this could be, he might go the distance, might get the decision, but I think he's a well-rounded fighter. If he can manage to get some takedowns on the lengthy guy, do some ground and pound, manage the distance. I mean, you don't get undefeated for being, not a calculated, fighter. So I think that's where I would be leaning on here. I think it's only minus 155 and over 1.5 rounds. I'm not sure what the finish may entail in this. Sometimes the more and more these guys fight, the Russians love to finish fights, though. They don't like to go to the cards. So I could see this fight not going the distance. Would be definitely a nice little juicer there to add in on something. But I really like Kershev in there too. He just seems like he's kind of gonna put it together and show us there. But that being said, he doesn't have the ring time, the experience that Muradov has, and that could pose a problem early in the fight. But I think as they get fatigued, as they start fighting each other, I think the cream will rise to the top, and Kershev will get the win to remain undefeated and move us into the next women's flyweight division. Vivian Araju versus Natalie Silva. And we are going in here not really knowing too much about either of the fighters besides just looking at their history. Again, the women's division, this is a flyweight bout. We should see a very evenly contested fight. Araujo has some experience against more quality opponents, but Silva then can use perhaps better skill in there. This is one that we have to just kind of see go in there. I don't really know how to handicap this fight. Again, one of these, I just like these fights to go longer. Most women, unless there's a big skill discrepancy, very rarely finish the fights. They have Silva as a huge favorite, so they have it as a huge opportunity to go the distance. So I would probably lean towards Silva winning by decision if possible. I mean, they do have quite a large finish percentage for the women's, roughly 50 to 70% between them. So they're not going to the card too much, but they are in the octagon a lot. I can see a very conservative fight, picking out their points, trying to win and advance their career towards a belt. That being said, we're just going to move on to the next one. We have a rescheduled bout of Randy Brown versus Muslim Shlakovov. And boy, I've been excited for this one since it got rescheduled. I believe Shlakovov either got sick or picked up an injury right before the run-up at the end of last year, and they rescheduled this fight. I love rescheduled fights early in the year on the fight card. These guys have been fiending for months, and this should be a whale of a matchup. Huge reach advantage for Randy Brown. Huge leg reach advantage. Shlakovov is a knockout artist and a specialist, and it could be having a lot of time. He'd spend a lot of time trying to get in there on Randy Brown. I mean, look at Randy's decision percentage, 85%. He uses that length, and he plays tremendous defense, right? He's picking apart. I think Shlakovov could get in there, and, sometimes, I know I always like the reach advantage guys, but sometimes, if you can get in there, they don't know how to deal with it. That being said, it's such a reach advantage. This one's so hard to predict. I really like Shlakovov, too. I think he's got a lot of dog in him. I think he's a live dog here. At plus 205, Randy Brown is one of those fighters that has taken some losses, hasn't looked sharp at times, but also is very calculated and methodical as a fighter. I'm leaning Shlakovov here just because we got plus money. He's he's coming off a loss. I think he's ready to just do some damage, and if he doesn't do some damage, I think he's I really don't want this fight to go the distance. I really want to bet that it doesn't, but I can't put my money there looking at Randy Brown's decision percentage, right? So that being said, I really could see Shlakovov coming in there and starching him with a KO if he gets him to the ground and pound, negate that length. But should be a whale of a nice rematch or a rescheduled fight for both of them. Again, it probably will go the distance. They both are very similar. They have bad, they beat the bad fighters but lose to the good ones. So this should be a really good measuring stick to see how they propel themselves forward into the future with the welterweight fight rescheduled from late last year and who's going to progress their career one step forward. Next, we have Moicano versus Drew Dober, and boy, what a fucking what a firecracker to end the co-main before we get to the main event. I am in love with this fight. Drew Dober is an absolute warrior, always willing to risk it on the line, throwing hands, wrestling, doing whatever it takes, to get the job done, risking it, right? He's not afraid to take a loss, which I really respect as a fighter. And Moicano, he hasn't been so active in the last few years, which it kind of gives me a little sub. He seems to be a little bit more dynamic, or not as dynamic as Dober, right? If we look at the finish percentages, not knocking anybody out while Dober can, and with the subs. I really like Dober here. I like Dober probably by ground and pound. Take him down, do some damage. Moncayo may try and slip in there. He could do some damage, roll him, get him in guard, beat him up. He looked so good in his last fight, and Moicano has not been in the ring as much the last couple of years. He's getting long in the tooth as well. He's been around for a while. Interesting matchup. I am so surprised to see this on there. I can't recall from my memory if this is like a remake of a match, if somebody pulled out and then somebody came in. I can't remember that, but that being said, I am leaning Dober here all the way, plus money, and he's stretched. It says plus 120. He's up to plus 154, so I could really see this fight going Dober's way. We're in a smaller, they're in the smaller octagon in the Apex, the 25-foot cage versus a 30-foot cage on the big pay-per-view arena events, and I think that's just going to play into Dober. I think the more compact, he's going to be faster, quicker, and I just don't think we'll see Moncayo keep up with him. That's another one that I'm a big Dober fan. I think he's got a lot of potential, and he's just good for the company, man. He's exciting to watch, and I can't wait for him to lace him up, throw down on Saturday night. And that is bringing us into the main event, ladies and gentlemen. Roman Dolidze versus Nasruddin Imavov. Very similar records, 12 wins apiece. No contest to Chris Curtis for Imavov in his last fight. Incidental eye poke. Roman lost his last fight, but that was nothing off of him. He had a great opponent. This one should be an absolute back-and-forth action. 5-round main event, middleweight division. Imavov has been in those before with Strickland. Roman, I think he has a great chance to win. I think Roman could win inside the distance. That's where I would lean if you like Roman. But if you like Imavov, I could really see him winning by decision because he's a very calculated, clean, technical fighter. You'll see a lot of leg kicks from Imavov. You'll see jabs. You'll see a lot of movement. Not a haymaker. And that's where I think Roman could catch him. And if he can do the damage and get him to take down and finish there, I can't see this fight going 5 rounds, to be honest. I'm leaning Roman as well. I like those last two, the double Ds at the end, Dober and Dolidze, couple live dogs. The fight not to go the distance. I love Imavov, dude. He's such a clean fighter. He's very very respectful of the game. I just think this is a bad matchup for him. I just think he's a little undersized at 185 compared to some of these guys that can come down. That being said, he handled Buckley. He held his own against Strickland. He was fighting Curtis pretty well, too. IPO, Curtis wants him back, I know. So if we see Imavov win, I could see a Chris Curtis rematch on a main event sometime. That would be banging. If not, I like Roman inside the distance, one way or the other. But this is probably going a little bit longer, and I would lean towards Imavov by decision. If I had a gun to my head, otherwise this should be a cracker main event. I mean, I really can't see it going 5 rounds, man. But that being said, it's the fight game. Anything can happen. I'm your boy P. Welsh here with the Fight Night Breakdown. Please leave a comment below if you liked it. Anything will help the channel. I know I wasn't the cleanest with this, and thank you for watching my first ever Fight Night preview. We're going to be bringing these weekly around the same time, and we're going to be enhancing them week in and week out. I appreciate everybody tuning in, clicking to the end of the video. If you did, thumbs up. Tell me who your favorite fighter is, and from there, my guy's Gilbert Burns. Peace and love, chat.